This is gonna suck, but it needs to be done. This is a response to a follow up video that Rick did about why music these days is getting worse and is worse. It's a common theme on his channel. Um, that first video was bad. This video is so bad that it's actually pretty difficult to adequately explain just how bad it is. Um, but I'm going to try because I think it needs to be said. But before I do that, I want to give credit where credit is due. And this is not an attempt for me to sort of compliment sandwich my criticisms or couch anything I'm going to say later in some insincere praise. But I do believe that Rick, as a custodian of music history and as an interviewer, is incredibly valuable. I think he's good. I think he's great at it. I look at things like the George Benson interview. That is a piece of music history and important. And the reach that he has means that these videos are seen by millions of people, and these names get to go around in the heads of young people and old people alike. And I think that that's great. That being said, I do think that the particular takes that he has on this subject are not great. And I'm not a video maker. I'm not a video editor. I'm not a content creator, really, at all. But I do think that that I have the capability of pointing out some of the not so great stuff in here. And someone has to do it, so why not me? So let's get started. We're gonna do this old school React style on the fly. So here we go. God help me.
Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. Okay, I want to address some of the comments and emails I've gotten in response to my last video, the real reason music is getting worse. I'll just read two that just came in. They're right in a row. An old man talking about how they don't make music like they used to, how fresh. Or music changes and the reason you don't like it is because you're getting older. When I have people on my channel like Matteo Mancuso or Mateus Asado or bassist Mohini Day or even Tosin Abasi playing these insane licks. They don't play music.
This should be self-explanatory here, but acknowledgement of virtuoso talent is not an endorsement, or really it doesn't say anything about your opinion on the state of modern music or your openness to different genres or types of music at all. It doesn't say much of anything. This is like dangerously close to I'm not racist, I've got a black friend kind of stuff. Like and like, man, it's really difficult to hear. I really, 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 really hope Rick doesn't have a team of people that he runs this stuff through, because I think that this should be something that is caught pretty quickly, and it's not a good look. I just don't think it's an appeal to anything that's real. I don't think it says anything. I don't think it matters at all. I
Like anybody used to. They're contemporary players that have reinvented the instrument. Or if I listen to a Bach piece like the Brandenburg Concertos that were written between 1708 and 1721, not during my lifetime, not during my parents' lifetime, not even during my great-grandparents, well, maybe my great-grandparents' lifetime, I'm not sure. You know, my mom loved Puccini's opera Madame Butterfly. It was written in 1904. Now, my mom was born in 1925. When do you think she became aware of that piece? There were no recordings back then. Maybe she heard it on the radio in the 40s. She didn't have a record player until the 50s or so when she married my dad. She probably saw it on TV in the 60s. It has nothing to do with her generation. It's just when she discovered the piece, just like we're discovering things every single day, whether they're written today or they're written in the past. Most of you that are writing these comments, Rick stuck in the past, you don't know what's on the charts right now. I'm the one doing the Spotify top 10 countdowns. Do you know those?
I think this should also be self-explanatory. I mean, the anecdote about his mom and dad, I think that's a complete, or his parents, I think that's a complete non sequitur. I don't think that has anything to do with anything. I don't. And then out of left field, this, you don't know the top 10 on Spotify. I do. Number one, I don't think that anyone would really argue that the Spotify top 10 that he's obsessed with is really a good barometer for the state of popular music these days. It's also why we don't really give a shit about the Billboard Top 100. We just don't care about those things anymore because music can be consumed in so many different ways, as he'll discuss later. We know that marketing teams and record labels can manipulate and push the music that they want people to hear. There's artists that are perpetually up there forever, despite falling in and out of the zeitgeist, like Drake and Taylor Swift, for example. It doesn't say anything. That you read it, that you know about it, other people know about it. That there's so much content talking about the quality of music and reviewing it that acknowledge all of these things, constantly, and it just doesn't matter. It doesn't tell you about the state of music. It doesn't tell you about the music that's being made and the people that are making it. It doesn't say anything inherently about that. Now, you could look at data like that. You could use that data to say record labels are continuing to push the same things towards you. They're continuing to shove the same things down your throat. You always see the same artists. There's argument. There's a there somewhere, but it's not a there that really goes into a lot about the quality of music compared to any other time. It just doesn't mean what Rick thinks it means. And I feel that most people intuitively know that, which is why it's so frustrating to see Rick do this. I don't know if he really believes this at all. Looking at his face right now, I don't know if Rick, if you sat him down, if he would really die on this hill, because I can't imagine that he would.
Those songs, if it's new to you, it's new. Whether it was written in 1824 like Beethoven's Missa Solemnis, which you should check out, or if it's Mozart's Symphony in G minor, which was written in 1788, or if it was Coco by Charlie Parker, which was recorded in 1945. If it's new to you, it's new. Doesn't matter what generation it's from. So I don't buy any of that crap. And then there's the, Rick, you're just anti-technology. Now that's ridiculous. I'm anti-technology. I've got a YouTube channel with over 4 million subscribers. I have over 1 million followers on Instagram. I make videos using all the latest software. I use AI all the time.
I mean, Rick knows what people mean when they say he's anti-technology. He's anti-technology when it comes to making music. He knows this. He's anti. No one's saying Rick is. When someone says Rick Beato is anti-technology, most people know that he's not. They don't mean that Rick is like, God, stupid microwaves. I remember when we used to have to boil our chick. No one thinks that. No one is talking about that, Rick. We know that. We know that you're online and you're a content creator. We're watching you on YouTube right now. People, when they say that, and I don't have a dog in this, I don't really care, but what Rick thinks about auto-tune, I think that there's all sorts of arguments to be made about whether that stuff's good and or not, and it's a different video. But I feel, again, this is another one of those things, I feel like Rick knows what people mean. Is he choosing to not acknowledge it? Does Rick not know that people are talking about auto-tune and not iPhones? I just don't understand. I just don't know. I cannot believe that Rick Beato is sitting there reading a comment going, Rick, you're anti-technology, and he just doesn't understand the context in which it's being said. I don't know. It makes it so difficult This is so hard for me. I feel like I'm pulling my own teeth.
All the time, all the time. I use all the latest DAW software and plugins. I guarantee you, I'm more tech savvy than the jokers out there writing in the comments. I don't care how old they are. The point.
I mean, again, what do you even say to that? Rick, I can promise you that you're not. This is one of the most obvious Dunning-Kruger statements I think I've ever heard in my life. Being able to use Premiere does not mean you are tech savvy. Like I don't know. I don't know. So yeah.
Point of the first part of the video, music is too easy to make, was that people rely on using technology to fix things or make up for the fact that they don't want to spend the time to get good at something. Whether it's playing an instrument, recording, or they just don't want to spend the years it takes to become good enough to record things.
Again, this is just I disagree completely. This is I used to walk 3 miles uphill both ways to school. Kids these days don't want to work, kind of stuff. We'll get more into this later, but I don't want to, let him get that out there without a little bit of a rebuttal.
Without the assistance of all the different things they need to fix their bad performances, whether it's timing or tuning or whatever. None of this even matters. There's a way bigger problem going on with music right now. People don't care about music as much as they used to, and that's a big statement. If you don't believe it, here are the receipts. Let's take a look at Google Trends. This is actually...
For those of you that are interested, this is probably the best example you're ever going to see in your entire life about how not to use Google Trends in any way, shape, or form. So,
measures actual search traffic on Google for specific topics. If I type in music in 2004, music was at 100%. And where is it now? It's down to 25%. So search traffic on the topic of music has dropped 75% in the last 20 years. Well, maybe that's just certain types of music. How about pop music? That's probably the bulk of it. Let's look at that.
all right. We could see where he's going with this. He's going to talk about hip hop and country music, and he's going to show Google trend lines going down. Oh man. If you have all of your faculties about you, alarm bells should be going off immediately. Who is Googling the words music? Who is Googling pop music as a search term? Remember, this isn't Googling music or describing the trend of music as a topic. This is talking about a search term, specifically music. It gets worse. It does not get better, folks.
Yeah, that's bad too. What about other genres like hip hop? Oh, that's really bad. Maybe.
Again, hip hop is plateauing pretty heavily, but it's about as popular as it's ever been. So
country music is doing better. I'll just search the United States because that's pretty much where people listen to country music. Well, country music.
And again, like here's another small flaw. Country music is doing better because of this. Like these aren't absolute values. These don't tell us anything about the actual popularity. Like this alone makes the rest of what Rick is saying wrong. I mean, he's already showing us here why this take is just bad. Country music is not thriving. It is not doing better relative to anybody else. It's just, especially not to the degrees that you would think it is here. You would think hip hop has died. I mean, according to these numbers, but they don't mean anything. They don't mean anything.
It's down 50%, but it's pretty steady after that. Well, what about art? Is that any different than music?
Who is Googling art? You know, I don't want to, like, this is going to sound bad, but these are these are boomer searches. These are what we would define as boomer searches. No one searches this way. No one types art in. Like, as the internet has gotten older, we've gotten better at parsing the information. We've gotten better at Googling. These are undeniable facts of the internet. Who is Googling just art enter as a search term? No one is. If we want to get into anecdotes, when I was 10 years old in the year 2000, I had my first computer and I was connected to the internet. My dad was involved in IT, and I told my parents I wanted to start a website called art.com where my friends and I could draw pictures and sell them. And even then, my mother and my father told me, well, first of all, that domain name is probably taken. And second, you probably should be more specific, because who's going to be searching just for art in general and then happen to find your website? They knew, my mother knew, my dad knew, 6 years before YouTube existed, before algorithms had even become a part of social media. They knew maybe you should not just put all your fucking eggs in the art basket. Maybe you should specify a little bit. I mean, like, it's just because it's common sense.
That's down 60%. So I guess people don't care about art or music. If they don't care about that, then what do they care about? Must be video games. No, video games are actually way down too. But they hit 100% of search volume in 2012. Why is that? Because Minecraft came out on November 18th, 2011. That's why. And it's pretty much declined from there.
Video games are objectively the most popular they've ever been. They are a bigger part of society. They are a bigger part of the media zeitgeist and landscape. I mean, it is not close at all. And he just debunks his entire thing here. It is debunked. It is objectively the most popular time for video games it's ever been. I mean, it is insane to think this. Like, this is a level of detachment that is shocking. It is shocking. The lack of common sense you must have to see this and think that it supports your argument is disturbing. It isn't good. It makes me very, very perturbed. Like, I do not like that he does. I don't like living in my skin knowing that there's people as influential as Rick Beato out here that are looking at Google Trends data like this and just going, yep, there, see? Kids don't even like video games these days. They're just scrolling on their phones. And we'll get to that. We'll get there. But I mean, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
Well, what is actually up? Social media. It's at its highest right now. Social media is what people...
Yeah, all those people that are Googling social media. I mean, if you look into trends data, by the way, this is probably one that you could do this with. I'm not 100% sure. But you'll often see that these search terms, they're just not used. So the data kind of becomes pretty skewed and can be skewed by a pretty small amount of people. And a lot of times, sort of really vague and general search terms like social media, like on its head, they're just bad data points. But when you often look really deep into, or you don't even have to look really deep, when you look into it, you'll see that a lot of times it's just a pretty small group of people that are influencing these numbers one way or the other, in terms of the trend data, because no one's Googling the term social media. Like, no one is. My 65-year-old father is not. They're not. No one is. No one's doing that.
Are on. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on YouTube Shorts, but practicing music or listening to music or looking up things about art or playing video games, they're not doing. I called one of my friends who's a music teacher to ask him.
Anecdote Andy here. No one cares about anecdotes. I might skip through this part, but...
How many of your students only play during their lessons, meaning they never practice during the week, just play in their lesson? And he's like, oh, that's easy. 100%. And that pretty much goes for any of my kids' friends' parents. When I ask them that question, they tell me their kids don't practice. They go to their lessons every week without ever having touched their instrument. And I know right now there are thousands of music teachers out there watching this that are going, yeah, that's pretty much all my students too. Why are they not learning instruments?
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if we're gonna be anecdote Andes here, almost everybody over the age of 35 that I know, who was white, middle upper class, took piano lessons and talks about how they famously didn't like them. The amount of people that I've met, my wife, all of her siblings, even over here in Europe where I live now, it's a trope that goes back. You can see in 1960s and 70s sitcoms the trope of children not wanting to do their scales. I mean, this is a tale as old as at least recorded time. I'm pretty sure if you could read the Sumerian tablets, that there's probably some there going, fucking Billy didn't play his lute today. Why am I paying so many fucking shekels or whatever for Billy not to play his lute? Damn it. Like, what?
Instruments, and why is video game playing going down? Because
again, it's objectively not going down. Video games are as popular as they've ever been. People are not sitting on TikTok in lieu of playing video games.
It takes work, and they don't want to put in the work.
Again, people work harder for less. They work more hours on average for less relative to inflation. It is more difficult to buy a house. It is more difficult to get a high-paying job. When Rick and his parents were hanging out and he was a child, it was the easiest time to buy a house. Corporate taxes were the highest they've ever been. The capital gains taxes were higher. I mean, like, everything was objectively easier to do back then. It was easier to buy a car. It was easier to buy a home. It was easier to live. It was easier to afford food. This trope of these kids these days don't want to work is objectively, and excuse my French, horse shit. Just is.
Work. Because it's way easier just to open up their phone and put TikTok on or YouTube Shorts or Instagram and swipe up. Swiping up, swiping up. Anytime you see a phone being held, where's my phone? I have my phone. See that? I don't even have my phone. It's because anytime you see a phone in this position, they're on social media. If their finger's moving like that, they ain't taking pictures. Kids don't even take pictures. Well, they do for Snapchat, but another thing they waste their time on. I know I sound like an old guy yelling at clouds now. So the other part of the video about music consumption, people are saying, Rick, you're just not listening to the right kind of music. Oh, really? People are less interested in music because it's boring to them. That's what I think. Unless there's a video attached to it that's 15 seconds long. No, I'm
not. Let's go there. Number one, there is a tremendous amount of data that shows, well, number one, attention span. This whole thing about attention spans being shorter, especially in a per generation basis, as in younger kids have less of an attention span, is just objectively incorrect. There's no data that supports it whatsoever. You can find some dubious data with pretty small data sets that shows that overall attention spans have gone down. There's a very famous goldfish study that sort of came around, and you saw articles in 2015. I'm going to have some links in the description below of data from all sorts of different sources that goes into this at length. It's a very complex study, the study of attention spans. But what is absolutely unequivocally true is that Gen Z, as an example, is obsessed, and often to the tune of 50% or more of people, when asked, prefer long-form content. Long-form video essays are some of the most popular content and fastest-growing content on YouTube. So it's actually to the point where some people are calling it sort of a plague, and they want to go back to when, they didn't, they got their weekly 12-minute videos from their favorite people instead of waiting for 2 years for these high production, heavily researched video essays. Gen Zers love long form content. They are the drivers of a huge part of the podcast boom. The longer the podcast, the better. For Gen Zers and millennials, it is indisputable that the drivers behind these things, these trends, are younger people. People are appreciating and enjoying TikTok. Increase their the time that their videos can be, because longer form videos on TikTok were doing so well. There's two sides to every one of these coins, and this idea that like kids these days aren't working as hard as we did, and their attention spans are ruined by their little phones. It's just nonsense. There's also, if we want to get into how people consume media, very objectively, older people tend to share, spread, and believe misinformation at a significantly higher clip than their Gen Z and millennial counterparts. And reading the comments on this video, I can see that anecdotally that is absolutely true, because people are buying this gobbledygook, hook, line, and sinker. It is shocking that Rick is this popular and doesn't know that. I really honestly can't believe it, but then I also can. But again, it's objectively nonsense. God, the amount of studies, I have a Google Doc that I'm looking at here that shows just the amount of data on this subject that just completely contradicts everything Rick is saying. It's sad to see it being spread, and it's sad to see the comments that buy into it, and it's sad to see that these boomer attitudes that have, done so much harm in the past are still so pervasive, even in successful YouTube circles. I don't like it.
Saying that all of today's music is bad and people are not into it. I'm well aware there are great bands and artists that exist today, but my point is they are not what's popular now. These artists live relatively in obscurity. It's that popular music is getting worse, and that was my entire
That's not his point. This is moving the goalposts. He says that music gets worse all the time. The Spotify top 10 list is not an accurate representation of the music being made or the people that make it, nor does their relative monetary success. How many, this is another thing that really upsets me, is that the age that he talks about and all of his, they fawn over so much, this older generation, was the age that enabled these record labels to become so predatory and powerful that God knows how many actually talented people we lost in the 40 years that went by, when they had basically all of the power in a very small circle at the top. Because if you didn't have the means of recording and then distributing your music, you had literally nothing. You had no recourse. There are, he talks about people living in obscurity. Well, he feels that there's this massive ocean of incredibly talented artists that came out because of the sieve of time. And this is another thing that Rick doesn't understand. And the people that believe in Rick and think that this is true do not understand. They see a nearly endless list of these bands that they love, but they don't understand the time scale. It doesn't compute that, oh yeah, this came out over a 50-year period. The bands that he's talking about in the 80s are different from the bands that he loved that came out in the 60s, and there's 30 years off in between them. He has no conception of how the top-loaded and top-heavy music industry alienated people of all talent levels throughout. I mean, how many stories do we have to hear of these old rock and rollers talking about how they got completely screwed over by their record labels? I mean, this is something we talk about today because the power was centralized. It was top down. You could not self-distribute for a long time. What were you going to do in the 60s if you couldn't press your own vinyl? I mean, it is objectively better now that we have the means, you and I, to share our music with the world. It is a significantly better system Now, does it have flaws? Does the reliance and importance of the algorithm shift things to the top that don't deserve to be there? Absolutely. Absolutely. Does that mean that there's less avenues to become popular, or that accessibility of music creation is a bad thing? I mean, this is so unbelievable from someone who claims to love music so much. I mean, it is embarrassing. It just is. I can't begin to describe how unbelievable I find these takes.
Thesis, and the data doesn't lie. Now you can interpret it any.
His data is garbage. Data doesn't lie. He used Google Trends, guys. Google Trends. Come on. Oh, dude, I'm gonna have a fucking stroke.
Any way you want, but in my experience, interest in music is declining. Just because some of you out there are young and are watching this, that doesn't mean that I'm out of touch at 62. We have young people that work here every day, like Tom. Tom, you're what, 27?
Yeah.
I know there's a bunch of music nerds out there that are saying, what are you talking about, Rick? We listen to music way more than we ever do. You're just out of touch. It's like, just look at the data. Now,
again, like, he doesn't have any data. Like, he's literally using Google Trends. How is Tom? This is so embarrassing. Look at the date. Do you know? I mean, if you don't hear him say, look at the data, and wince in probably physical pain, I can't, you cannot be helped. You probably don't have the faculties to manage this. I am by no means a smart man. I am painfully average. I suck at all those guitars back there like you can't even imagine. But this is frankly unbelievable. I mean, when I watched this, my jaw was on the floor. Man, Godspeed, Rick.